Hello, and welcome to Life Matters, the program where we engage life issues with critical thinking and a biblical worldview. Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. We're honored to host a variety of guests within the pro-life movement, each bringing their own unique perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Life Matters, Assure Women's Center, or our affiliates. Our goal is to foster open, thoughtful dialogue around life-affirming issues and equip listeners to stand for life. Right now, your donation to support Assure's life-saving work can go even farther. Some donors have challenged us to raise $500,000, and if we do it, they will give us an additional $120,000. But we only receive the $120,000 if we raise $500,000 by June 13th. Last year, we served over 1,600 women, many at high risk for abortion. With your help, we can reach even more. Be part of this life-saving work. Go to firststeptolife.com/bot and give now. That's firststeptolife.com/bot. Today will be part 2 of our interview with Teresa Kenney.
Welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host, Tony Clark, Executive Director of Assure Women's Center in Omaha. Today, we're joined by Teresa Kenney, a women's health nurse practitioner with over 24 years of experience, a NAPRO technology medical consultant, and the host of Hormone Genius podcast, which has reached over 750,000 women. She works at Sancta Familia Medical Apostolate and has a heart for restoring women's health through life-affirming holistic care. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
And I'm glad you're here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. How does hormonal birth control tie into a broader cultural mindset that separates fertility from womanhood? You kind of touched on that a little bit. And how does this affect the pro-life movement?
If you just look statistically, right, at the pro-life movement, in a sense, abortion's been around before birth control, but everyone thought that birth control would be the answer to abortion. And still people think that. But if you just looked at the trends, like the data doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. When birth control flooded into the culture, abortion rates skyrocketed. Yeah. And it's even written in, I think, to Planned Parenthood versus Casey that the way the judgment kind of read that we need abortion as a backup to failed birth control. Like everybody knew birth control would have a failure, right, but then give it to a 15 and 16-year-old, like of course it's not going to be taken correctly and used the right way, right? So what are you going to do when you're telling people that they have a way to control fertility so they're going to be able to have sex whenever they want, but then that doesn't work? Yeah. Well, this is the experiment we tried. Yeah. And the experiment is now close to 70 million abortions in the last, since 1975. Yes. So it didn't. It threw gasoline onto a fire, in a sense, a fire that I think everybody knew wasn't a good thing. You can go back to listening to Bill Clinton back in the day. No one thinks abortion is a good thing. We want it safe, legal, and rare, right? Well, that mantra has changed, right? So I would like to go back to that. That seemed bad at some point, but now you're like, guys, what has happened? Yeah. We're turning a culture that was built on family, right? The foundation of family, the economic, the cultural stability of our country being in two people who believe in a partnership together and they create this life together. And that makes the world go round, in a sense. And we've now told a lie that you don't need that. Yeah. That you can be happy without children, that you can be happy without relationship. Yeah. And, from my faith, what we learn is that we are image bearers. Yes. We are image bearers of God, and contraception puts a halt to that. And you can see it in every single place in our culture, from divorce to abuse to children without fathers, abortion rates, pornography, all of it is tied to our lack of believing that the way we are created by God, this ability to create eternal souls on this earth, is somehow not good. Yeah.
Are you preaching? You're preaching. So what's the alternative? How can medical professionals approach women's health in a way that cooperates with rather than suppresses the natural cycle?
Yeah, well, women are lining up for it, and so I do this podcast called The Hormone Genius. It's we speak about the science of the human body. It's not a religious podcast. It really is empowering women to be the genius of their hormones. And women are hungry for the truth. They're hungry to believe that they can be healed and restored. Here's what women are waking up and knowing. All of this stuff going on, these synthetic hormones, and it's not just birth control pills, but all the ultra-processed foods and all the toxins in our environment, they ain't good, right? So synthetic hormones, like, women don't want them anymore. And when you start to preach to women that their bodies have a design and you can figure it out, like, your body is constantly speaking to you. And so what we do is we teach women about their bodies. And what happens is they start to integrate, they become whole. And this can happen at 15. It can happen at 42. I mean, I've had women in my office who were in their 40s who didn't know when I asked them a question, do you know when you ovulate? They don't even know what that word means. And so we have to educate them about the basic functions of how their bodies work and that their body is speaking to them. And when I tell them I can heal their hormones, they want their hormones healed.
Absolutely.
They want to feel better because people don't feel good,
Wow. Wow. You've shed a lot of light on some topics that I think I wish I had known when I was a lot younger. So thank you again for what you're doing. So many couples facing infertility feel heartbroken and desperate. How does NAPRO technology, how is that an alternative to IVF?
I think every woman with infertility wants to know why. And so the approach of NAPRO technology is to get to the underlying root cause of infertility and miscarriage. That's the paradigm shift. In vitro fertilization jumps over that process. We do a few tests, but in the end, most people are told you have to have IVF to have a baby. We want people to have babies naturally. Women and men want to have babies naturally. We help them do that at double the success rate of IVF, double the success rate, because we get to the underlying root problem. Infertility, that word, it's a symptom. Think of that word as a symptom of something that's not right and not working. And we're going to figure out what that is. And again, that approach, just common sense, it just works better.
Wow. Can you walk us through a typical infertility journey, what that might look like for a couple working with you or your clinic? Because there might be someone that's listening and struggling with infertility and they're looking for some answers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first thing we do is we start with education about how their bodies work. So if a woman, again, can't tell me that she's able to interpret her own biomarkers are just the signs of our body that tell us when we ovulate, tell us the main event of the cycle, which is ovulation, not your period. So we give them usually some sort of instruction on tracking the cycle. For me, I use a system called Creighton model system. This is just a particular charting system. And then what we do is we test their hormones, and not just test their hormones once. We do a whole entire menstrual cycle profile. Because if there's something wrong with your ability to get pregnant, the secret is in that menstrual cycle, right? So we have to see if they're ovulating, if they make enough progesterone, they make enough estrogen. We have to see if they have appropriate amounts of cervical mucus, because that's the main ingredient that helps a sperm get to an egg. And then we actually do ultrasounds, and there's also sometimes surgical things that need to be done, because many women who have infertility have a disease called endometriosis, and that needs to be treated appropriately. Polycystic ovarian syndrome leads to higher amounts of endometriosis. So there's sometimes a surgical aspect to getting to the root cause, but there's a lot. It is very comprehensive. And in the end, again, higher success rate, women feel like you found some answers here, and I'm really appreciative of that.
So when people are looking at IVF, would an IVF, someone that is doing IVF, go through those same processes of checking the hormones and all those things, or?
So that to some degree, yes, and to some degree, no. Yeah. The amount of hormone testing that we do is just very much more intricate. It's like they don't really get into the menstrual cycle. They might do what we call day 3 testing. It's just a very basic kind of hormonal profile, but they don't do the hormones of the menstrual cycle in this deep, thorough way. So it is very different there. And they don't care about cervical mucus the way we care about cervical mucus. I mean, it's almost like they're unaware of just how the natural cycle really is so important to understand. I've seen from reproductive endocrinologists, even from patients that come to me, like when they're supposed to have intercourse, they put every other day. and through the entire month, every other day. Now, if you are based in science, that would make no sense at all, because we have one egg that gets released in one menstrual cycle for a woman, and that egg lives for 24 hours. Why would it make sense to tell the couple to have intercourse every other day? Figure out when you are releasing that egg and time it to that. We call that fertility-focused intercourse.
So it sounds like you're a little more specific. You're dealing with that individual on an individual basis, not just a grand, a broad scale.
And the patient is team with us. They're charting. They're telling us what's going on in their body, and we're working as a team together.
Okay. So is there a difference in, like if I don't know if insurance covers either, but is NAPRO technology looked at the same as IVF?
No. And that's the beautiful thing, is that NAPRO technology is really, again, just treating diseases. So when people come to me, there is no, again, I think of infertility as just a symptom. So there's no diagnosis of infertility. What is going on? Do you have pain? Do you have premenstrual syndrome? Do you have abnormal bleeding? We treat the underlying issue. It's covered by insurance because insurance should cover treating diseases.
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So how do you encourage couples not to lose hope when choosing a path that respects the dignity of every human life, even if it's harder or takes a little longer?
It's hard not to lose hope, but there is always hope. No matter what, there is always hope. When you have an openness in your heart, in a sense, the mind is very powerful. So we want to have that hope, because that hope is something that's infused within us in our being anyway, right? Because that's the spiritual end for us, because there is hope always. But there should be hope also on the fact that we actually have, a good process of helping couples with infertility. Now, I would be honest that people like me, doctors that work in my area, there's not as many of us. And so they get special training. So there's only like 700 to 800 across this United States. So we need so many more practicing healthcare professionals. And that's another reason why we do the podcast, is to educate people about this. But there is hope. And again, we see it every week. Women with positive pregnancy tests, and the hope of having a beautiful family.
Hi, this is Kyle with Assure Women's Center. Right now, your donation to support Assure's life-saving work can go even farther. Some donors have challenged us to raise $500,000, and if we do it, they will give us an additional $120,000. But we only receive the $120,000 if we raise $500,000 by June 13th. Last year, we served over 1,600 women, many at high risk for abortion. With your help, we can reach even more. Be part of this life-saving work. Go to firststeptolife.com/bot and give now. That's firststeptolife.com/bot. Thank you.
So you recently wrote The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. Why do you believe it's so important to start early in helping young women understand their bodies and cycles?
I think it's the most important thing ever. I think it's the reason why girls are confused. I think it makes them feel worth to know how their bodies work. I think it helps them to understand their identity as a daughter of God. But more importantly, it just helps them advocate for themselves in a situation where they go to the doctor and they're like, I'm having these problems. The doctor says, I have two things for you. It's a birth control pill and an antidepressant. How many of you out there listening have been in a doctor's office and been offered either antidepressants or a birth control pill for your problems? We are a pill-based society that just says, I don't have time to fix it. So just take this because your symptoms probably will get better. But they don't. But they don't. And so the reason why we want women to understand how their bodies work at a young age, so they can advocate for themselves. This is empowerment. This is holistic feminism, as my friend Leah Jacobson says. Holistic feminism is the idea that, girl, you deserve everything. You deserve the ability to know when you're going to have a baby and choose not to have a baby. You deserve to be protected in your body. You deserve to be respected as a woman. You deserve to have the career that you want. You deserve it all. But we don't have to hurt you or destroy your reproductive parts. We don't have to suppress you with chemicals. You can be you as a woman and thrive.
That sounds like true feminism to me. So what are some practical things parents, churches, or even pregnancy centers can do to help girls grow with confidence in their womanhood and a healthy, life-affirming view of fertility?
I mean, starting with the Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole, like having a book, like that's aesthetically pleasing, that's simple, but like goes to the whole thing. We need education programs for these girls about their fertility, about their cycles, and not even, it's not about fertility. And so when you take a younger female who's not interested in being pregnant, we know this in, working with clients that are, they don't see themselves as a mom, right? They're not interested in being pregnant, but we want them to believe that their body is speaking to them from a health perspective. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they coined that the menstrual cycle is a vital sign, a vital record of female health. Every woman should know that, because learning about your body just means that you're in tune to what's working and what's not working. And if your cycle doesn't work right, you don't feel well, right? You know it. Women come in and they complain to me. They're tired. Their cycles are a mess. Their heavy periods, their cramps, all those things. That can be restored. And that doesn't have to be the birth control pill. But education to these young women, and there should be programs. I know that, I have people out there in the larger community that are doing all sorts of incredible things. Natural Womanhood, Facts About Fertility, Elevate, the program with Katie Vidmar. There's just so many things, but we need to educate these girls about their bodies.
Teresa, are there any schools or perhaps Bible studies that are using your book as like a Bible study for girls or a group study for girls?
A few, but there needs to be 1,000 more. Yeah. So if you're listening, again, this book is just, I think God put it here. Really, it was an orchestration of a lot of people involved. And I think this book really is a key, because it's not religious, it's just beautiful. It's just going to teach them what they need to know. But yeah, a Bible studies, it should be in every high school. It should be in every life education, sex education, biology class. But it doesn't have to be, it can be done in so many different ways, but we're not doing it. Again, sex education is just focused on this negative risk mitigation.
Absolutely. So how does someone find your book? Where do they get their hands on it?
Yep. Amazon would probably be the easiest. Again, The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole by Teresa Kenney on Amazon. You can also get it at Lumen, Lumen Press.org, lumenpress.org.
Okay, good. As someone who's worked in medicine for over 2 decades, what would you say to healthcare professionals who want to take a stand for life in their practice, especially in today's culture?
I would say that I think the biggest worry for healthcare professionals sometimes is if they speak out, they're going to lose patients. And I'm telling you, the exact opposite will occur. There's a reason why in the Bible, the most common phrase is, do not be afraid, because Jesus knows that our hearts are based sometimes in fear. Fear of really standing up for the truth, fear of standing up for our faith or what is right. And I'm telling you, if you take away that fear and you just say, I'm going to go with what's true, good, beautiful, right, life is, people will come and knock your door down. I have women ask me every day, how can I find a doctor that believes in the same things that I do? How can I find a doctor that I know doesn't do abortions, or maybe, I'm not sure and they don't know what to do? If you stand up and have a voice for life, you will have more business than you can count. I mean, and so take away the fear.
Well, okay, that's I would 100% agree with you. Same here. We only refer to doctors that have like values like we do, and I think that's very important that the girls are looking for and people are looking for. So I would say take a stand as well. I want to know what my doctor believes. I want to know if I get to a point where there's a decision to be made, is that doctor going to operate in the same faith that I'm operating in? So I think that's hugely important. So Teresa, I'm an African American, and I'm really curious as to how you see the work that you do, and also just women's healthcare in general, how that impacts women of color.
Absolutely, yeah. And I put this into a larger category of anybody who either is minority or economically disadvantaged. I feel like it's kind of where, when we think about Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, in a sense, kind of went to this place of these people. We need to put a stop to them, reproducing. Like they're different, or it's not a good idea, whether they can't take care of their own children or, basically eugenics. And this still happens. In fact, I just read an article about this that just came out in the last couple of years, that when they did an entire kind of interviewing systems of doctors and anybody involved in the healthcare aspects of postpartum women who were minorities. minorities and economically disadvantaged women are pushed to have birth control put in immediately post-birth in a way that's different than, white, not socially disadvantaged people or economically disadvantaged. And they are pressured to leave those things in even past the point of these women not desiring them. So almost by their not their own consent.
Yeah.
And it was reported that this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And so we are still stuck in this idea that somehow there's a different set of care or a value set for people in different categories of life, and so where I feel like this work is incredibly valuable is in some way every woman needs to speak up for herself.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what. I mean, you could be the most affluent person in the world, but if you can't speak for yourself, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. But women in an African American woman, many times I think they're told they aren't supposed to speak for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Women need to speak for themselves. And where does that start? Empowerment, right?
Yes.
If I don't understand how birth control works or the disadvantages to certain types and the dangers to other types and side effects to all things, if I don't understand how my body works, how do I go against these doctors that are in what we call the power frame?
Yeah.
Right? We often, put ourselves in power frames in different institutions in our culture, and doctors would be in a power frame. Mm-hmm. I know better than you. I know what's best for you. And so you need to do this. Yeah. And I think a lot of times African-American women, minorities feel like we're a little bit more in a situation where we can't speak for ourselves. Yeah. And so I think that across the board, education is empowerment for everybody. Yeah. And so every woman deserves to know that their body is equally as good, equally as valued. It doesn't matter what race, where you come from, what your economic status is, any of those things. Yeah. Everybody should be treated equally the same.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important that we educate early so that we get that confidence. And you said 10, 11, and just continue to build on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just breaks my heart. And again, this article, I can literally picture they had 3 African American women on the cover of this article, and they were from down south. And apparently, this is kind of where Margaret Sanger was at originally too. And these doctors are they're just pressuring these women to do things they don't want to do to their bodies. And they've been harmed. This woman had an IUD put in that she didn't want in right after she delivered. That IUD became embedded and ended up taking a 7-hour surgery to remove 3 years later. And she asked to have it taken out multiple times. And the doctor refused over and over. How does that happen in our country? If I had something put in my body, a foreign device, and I said, next week, I want this thing out.
Yeah. And you tell me no.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that.
Something is very wrong with that.
Wow. So this podcast aims to equip Christians to speak up for life with truth and compassion. What do you hope listeners take away when it comes to advocating for true pro-women, pro-life healthcare?
I want women to believe that their bodies are made good. I think of, there was it was weeks ago now, but in Corinthians, there was this passage and it focused on the body before the spirit. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we forget that the body and the spirit are integrated, systems in a sense. But I want women to believe that their hormones are good, but they need to be empowered to understand that. And when they do, it will integrate themselves so deeply into their own identity, it will change their life. I have seen this over and over again where women, when they just chart their cycles, it's almost like a veil comes down. And they start to realize who they really are. And that can be a good and a bad. Like it can unveil sometimes the wounds. It can unveil the hurt and the diseases. But it's the pathway to total healing, to restoring. So first, believe that your body is good. Take a step to educate yourself about your hormones. If you're, again, in your 40s and you didn't teach your own daughters and you have no idea what I am talking about when I say, do you know how to, where your ovulation is? You need to know that even at 40. And you need to start telling younger women that there's a podcast out there called The Hormone Genius that can educate you on how to understand all these things. And it will change the world. It will literally change the world.
So, Teresa, for listeners who want to learn more, get connected, where can they find your podcast? We already talked about where they can find your book, but where can they learn more about your work at Sancta Familia?
Yeah, so Hormone Genius Podcast. The Hormone Genius Podcast is on every podcast listening site, so you can just Google that. And then I'm at Sancta Familia Medical on 10506 Burt Circle, which is a little bit off the beaten path, but if you know where Old Mill is in Omaha, we're just right there. So yeah, come see us if you have any issues. We have a beautiful facility. We have 5 female nurse practitioners and an awesome family practice doctor, Dr. Lloyd Pierre, and we're here to serve the community.
Good. Any final encouragement you'd like to leave with our listeners, especially women who maybe perhaps feel lost or confused in their reproductive health journey?
I would just tell them again that you really deserve more. And women have been hurt. And I want to apologize for all of the terrible women's health care that's been given in the last 25 years. But there are people out there who really care, like me, but many others. So if you're not being listened to, if you're not getting the care that you think you deserve, please move on and find somebody that really will learn to kind of treat your body with the design and the goodness that it really has.
All right. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great just getting to hear the work that you're doing and how we can help our young ladies grow in their own reproductive journeys.
Thank you so much.
We want to thank you for joining us on Life Matters this week. Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. To learn more about the ministry of Assure, visit firststeptolife.com. That's firststeptolife.com. There you can learn about the many services we provide, including how we come alongside abortion-minded mothers and empower women to choose life for her and her baby, as well as find our most current broadcasts and all of our past episodes. Right now, your donation to support Assure's life-saving work can go even farther. Some donors have challenged us to raise $500,000, and if we do it, they will give us an additional $120,000. But we only receive the $120,000 if we raise $500,000 by June 13th. Last year, we served over 1,600 women, many at high risk for abortion. With your help, we can reach even more. Be part of this life-saving work. Go to firststeptolife.com/bot and give now. That's firststeptolife.com/bot. Thank you.